Hi, my name is Bethany, and here at the Curated Feminine, I teach women how to elevate their lives and their lifestyle through connection to their core innate femininity and wisdom. So if that's of interest, please do hit like and subscribe. And if you want a more kind of intimate networking situation, then follow me on Instagram. It's at the Curated Feminine, where I respond to direct messages and answer questions. I have a big topic for you today, and it's one that's been weighing really, really heavy on my heart for a long time, and I wasn't quite sure how to articulate it until recently. And then even once I knew how to articulate it, I was afraid to post it because posting things that go against the grain these days requires bravery. But I'm feeling brave, so here we go. We desperately need femininity back in women. And the reason why is, and I don't mean pretty frilly dresses. I know I like these things, right? But that's just surface level, that's style. We need core innate femininity back. We need women that are more in touch with their wisdom and their intuition. And I think for a lot of women, we haven't been enabled and enable ourselves to do that for a really long time, because we live in a society that has for a very long time been made by men and for men. And whilst I'm very, very thankful for the feminist movement and every beautiful opportunity it's given me as a woman, I don't think that's got it right either. There is this nuance that is missing on both sides of the agenda, and I think it's time we talk about it. The messages that we get now as women are extremely confusing. On the one hand, we have this new kind of wave of information telling us that men and women have no actual differences and that gender is just a construct and that the way that we are raised completely dictates the way that we behave. And then on the other hand, we have this understanding that your hormones and the way that we are biologically designed and inclined makes every difference in terms of how we behave and interact with the world. We have some that are hyper fixated on femininity because of the surface level girly versions of it and don't really understand the core innate strength and capabilities of a woman in her feminine energy, who is really aligned with herself and her purpose and her wisdom. We have some people telling us that our careers are the most important thing in the world and that we shouldn't be having kids because they're a burden and they will hold you back in your career. And then we have others that are abandoning corporate life altogether to go and live in cottages and raise many, many, many children. And what are we to believe anymore about who we are as women? What are we to think? What are we to feel? What are we to do with ourselves anymore with these constant conflicting messages? And whilst I don't have an answer to all of that, I do know this. There are clear biological differences between men and women, and the way that the world has operated for such a long time has belittled the natural strengths and capabilities of women. And through the feminist movement, we have been enabled to do everything that men do, which is fantastic, but almost at the detriment to ourselves. It's like it's only okay if we are behaving like men, competing with men, acting like men. And the things that were softer, nurturing, more emotional, those things have somehow fallen by the wayside. And through that movement, we've lost sight of who we truly are. We've lost sight of our wisdom, our intuition, our capabilities, our ability to nurture others, to empathize and to help them change and grow. These are things that feminine essence is so good at. Masculinity provides structure and logic and reason, and all those things are beautiful, but that is one side of the coin. And the other side is nurturing, it's mothering, it is calling out the beauty in others, calling out the gifts in others. And these are things that women who are connected to their own feminine wisdom are very, very good at. And this is not something that's respected in society and hasn't been for a very long time. So it's no wonder women are completely disconnected from it. If we look back at our history, for thousands of years, men were doing the hunting and they were going out doing the things that required physical brute strength. They were protecting their families, and that was essentially their role. And for women, their role was to build community, to understand people, and to nurture. That was the role of women. It was the people. The men did the things and the women were involved with people. And it's through this building of community that women did for so long that we are able to be more emotionally intelligent. We're often able to read the nuances in situations that sometimes, not always, but sometimes men can't. We have this knowing and we have this purpose when it comes to reading other people. And this is something that isn't really fostered or pointed out in women anymore, because the things that tend to be celebrated these days are the hustle culture, the boss babe lifestyle, the delaying children until it's almost too late and then panicking because society is telling us we must work all the time to compete with men. And whilst it's very possible that there are lifestyle factors that contribute to the way that we behave, what we understand biologically about men and women is that hormones and even the way our brains work, even the size and the way that our neurons interact with each other, is different between men and women. Women actually have more blood flow to the areas that have to do with connection and people, which is really fascinating. And instead of focusing on the beauty of these differences, what's happened is we have ensured that women can vote, thank goodness. We've ensured that women can have their own mortgages and houses and do, honestly, what they want, the same as men. But through all of that freedom, which should never have been taken away in the first place, but through all of that freedom, we've lost sight of the beauty of womanhood and the true uniqueness that we bring to the world. And instead it's something that's generally looked upon as weak or something to be ashamed of. You can't be too emotional in the workplace. You can't rely on your intuition. You need to solely rely on facts and figures and cold hard data. And again, both sides of the coin are important, and somehow we've only been focusing on the side that tends to be more masculine. One of the most fascinating differences between men and women is when they're intimate with each other. When a man and a woman are together, I don't know if I can say sex on YouTube, can I? I'm not sure. When a man and a woman are together, the female body releases hormones after the act that encourage us to bond. And men do not have this. Oftentimes men fall asleep. So even our biology is constantly encouraging connection between women and children, between women and other people. It is, our very biology is built on the creation of community and on nurturing. And the fact that this exists, the fact that this is a thing, and yet it's not celebrated the way that it used to be, is an absolute shame. We're at the point in society where even mentioning that men and women are different can get us trolled, because different somehow means one is inferior, and that is simply not the case. Difference is beautiful. If we look at apples and oranges, one isn't better than the other. I mean, unless you have a preference either way, but celebrating the differences is a really beautiful thing to do. And I think as a society, what we've done instead is started to celebrate more of the masculine traits than perhaps we think. And the reason we don't think about it is because it's not spoken about very often. Modern feminism, meaning the most recent iteration of feminism, does not actually serve women as well as I think we would hope it does. Instead, what it tends to do is it focuses on placing the blame on men, even men that had nothing to do with policies that are in place, even men that had nothing to do with the structuring of Western civilization, right? They are born too recently for that. And yet they often get blamed for these things and are made to feel unworthy simply for who they are. And then for women, we are basically told that we are worthy as long as we are behaving like the very men that we are shaming. It makes little sense. I envision a world where our men are deeply valued for their unique traits and our women are deeply valued for their unique traits. I envision a world where men have the courage to be themselves and look after the women that not so very long ago were not being looked after by society and the way that things were run. I envision a future where women are connected to their wisdom and connected to their intuition and focused on building community and nurturing others. And yes, we can do all of those things whilst having very successful careers. We can do those things whilst raising children. We don't have to pick and choose the way that it's done. But right now, there's no real picking and choosing at all. Instead, it tends to be act like a man or you're not for women. Society has been run by men and for men for so long that I think the changes that we really needed never quite occurred the way that they needed to. And notice I'm not blaming men with this statement. Again, a lot of the men that are alive today have nothing to do with the way that Western civilization was built. It's not their fault. But here are some of the things that we've been told, both men and women, for a long time that I think have really contributed to the issue. It's things like logic and reasoning trump all and are superior to emotions and intuition. Hustle culture is king, and a woman's natural cycles should not be taken into account, and instead everything should run on the cycle of a man, which runs in 24 hours, whereas a woman, we're like the moon, we run on a monthly, very cyclical basis. Rearing children is a burden because it takes you away from your career, and you can't keep up with the men if you're away rearing children. Empathy and emotions are inferior to cold hard facts. These are things that we've been told for decades, if not longer. Even some of the psychology that we have today is based off of Carl Jung, who never quite understood the sovereignty and beauty of women. He viewed them as inferior. So the messaging about women for a long time has been negative, but I really truly believe that we are focusing on the wrong enemy here. Our enemy in this instance is not men. In fact, our enemy doesn't need to be anything at all. To me, there are two main issues at play here that are contributing to the overall issue. First is that many women were shamed when they were little girls. They were told that they are too bossy, they were told that they are too loud, they were told not to act like the boys, they were told they can't get too dirty, they were told to be ashamed of their own sexuality, and then when they got older, they were told that the masculine way of being is superior, that the logic and the lack of emotion and the lack of nurturing capabilities, they were told that all of these things are superior to things that may have and likely do, because again, we are structured differently, come more naturally to us as women. When you combine these two factors, the shame of how you were as a little girl and then reaching adulthood and being told that a more masculine way of doing things is superior to the way that you might naturally be inclined, it's an absolute recipe for a disaster. And this is the reason why when we have occurrences like this, what often happens is women reach adulthood and then they let the wounds of the past dictate how they behave in the present. We end up coming at things from the perspective of our rights and where things are equal, rather than coming at it from a place of sovereignty, from a place of knowing that no matter what society dictates, we are powerful, we are wise, and our mind, body, and soul are our own. And it really doesn't matter what was pushed upon us in the past, it matters how we move through the world now. Little girls who are told that they can't act the way that little boys do will be hell-bent on proving that they can do anything boys can do but better when they reach adulthood. And the other issue this creates is it shifts the focus away from nuance and balance. So a lot of women these days, for example, think that chivalry is a very negative thing because we associate it with the 1950s when men were very chivalrous and would make sure that women didn't walk next to the street to protect them from oncoming cars, and they would make sure that their doors were open for them, whilst at the same time controlling the things that they did and oftentimes belittling them and viewing them as inferior. So in modern day society, we now tend to associate chivalry with things that are negative, rather than knowing that there is a time and place for it. It's just that the way that society ran back then was wrong. We fail to see the nuance. Chivalry is still very positive. It is men trying to look after the women in their lives. It is men honoring the women in their lives. But instead we associate it with, if he honors me, he's actually taking advantage of me, because that's how things used to be. Just because men were chivalrous, the most chivalrous during a time when women were very oppressed, doesn't mean that chivalry is wrong. Just because men refused to let us vote a little over a century ago, doesn't mean that when they are protective and put our needs first, that they are being belittling. It doesn't mean that they are trying to own us. And in a world where balance and nuance is not viewed as very sexy, instead it's viewed as boring, we tend to live for the drama. We tend to live for the pendulum that swings way too far in the other direction, and we never quite reach equilibrium. And equilibrium is really what we need at the moment. Another example of an area where we are more focused on our rights as women rather than what actually feels right to us intuitively is when it comes to sex. Because as little girls, many of us were taught that if we sleep with multiple men, our worth is somehow diminished. We now have reached adulthood and take that as, well, I will sleep with as many men as I want to because my worth is not diminished and you were wrong. But But this thought process doesn't actually serve us, because when it comes to sex with men, we carry all the risk and men carry basically none. We carry the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. We carry the risk of being physically assaulted. We carry the risk of being stalked if we're with the wrong man. It's extremely important as women to be able to vet the people that we are with. And again, whilst we do have sexual urges, yes, ladies, we definitely do, we are not biologically inclined the same way as men. Our hormones just don't quite work that way. And again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but generally we won't have the same urges as men. So it is up to us to filter the men that we date and see, and only sleep with them when we really know who they are. And this is what women who are tapped into their own intuition, who are tapped into their own wisdom, are able to do. And that is what is safe for us. That is what is best for us. That is what honors us the best. Not because we should be ashamed of our sexuality, not because we shouldn't have the same rights as men. We should be able to sleep with whoever we want. It's just that biologically, it tends to not make sense for women. This is another area where I think feminism hasn't actually served women very well, because again, we were so focused on the rights and what we should be able to do if we choose, that we've lost sight of what is actually best for us as women, what is actually best for our bodies, our minds, our souls, what serves us best from a hormonal perspective, from a biological perspective. Instead, we've been focused on, can we do it because it feels good? And like, yes, but a woman who's tapped into her intuition doesn't just do things because it feels good or because the feminist movement tells us that we should. We do what feels right. We do what our own wisdom and the wisdom of the communities that we build tells us will be best for us. In the same light of things that seem like they serve us but don't, the same little girls that were taught to essentially seek their validation externally because they were taught that they need to be good girls, they need to behave a certain way. If you do that, mommy and daddy will be happy with you. Those little girls that were taught all of that and taught that the way that the world views them and their looks is most important are the same girls that will seek external validation in adulthood. So these are the same girls that will think society is telling me that hustling is good, so I'm going to go and do it even if it burns me out. Society is telling me that children are a burden, so I'm not going to have them even if there's part of me that kind of wants to. And again, there's nothing wrong with choosing not to have children. There's certainly nothing wrong with building a beautiful career. But we've lost track of what we think is best for us as individuals. We've lost track of what actually works for us biologically. We've lost track of what actually brings us the most joy and happiness because we've been so focused on proving everybody wrong and seeking external validation instead of validating ourselves. So why does all of this even matter? Why do I even care? I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is absolutely falling apart. Almost everywhere we look, there is war. There are people taking their own lives because they don't see their own value and worth. There are marriages falling apart. There are children not being raised properly because their parents haven't done the work to heal the wounds of their past. And women in their more feminine energy is what is missing. I mean, it's not all, it's just one piece to a giant puzzle, but it's certainly a start. Women are able to see the gifts in others that sometimes men cannot. Women are able to nurture and to help heal in ways that sometimes men cannot. Women are able to connect their emotions sometimes in ways that men cannot. And when we focus only on the masculine aspects of society and we belittle the things that make us human, when we belittle the things that are softer and more intuitive and more emotional, we are cutting off a massive part of ourselves. Most of the issues in the world would be solved if we had more people working on being loving and nurturing and healing themselves instead of only focusing on cold hard facts and data and corporate careers. If we were more focused on the healing of ourselves, of being connected with our intuition, of being connected with our own innate knowing, of being connected with our spirituality, if that was our focus, society would be so different. Now, personalities do exist on a spectrum, essentially. So there are definitely men that are more connected to their own emotions. There are definitely men that have more quote-unquote feminine traits. And there are definitely women that lean more towards masculine traits. And all of that is completely fine. I am not saying we rewrite society and suddenly go back to the 1950s where men are men and women are women. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the traits that tend to come more naturally to women because of how we are biologically built are the very traits that are currently being repressed in society. And some of it is men repressing it in women, and some of it is women repressing it in each other and in ourselves. I think a start towards a better society is women connecting with the side of themselves that has been suppressed for a very long time in the name of an equality that we never quite knew what it was going to look like. So where do we go from here? To me, it starts with a mindset shift. To me, it starts with honoring the things that likely come more naturally to you as a woman. To me, it starts with rethinking why you think of things the way that you do. Is it because of what comes naturally to you? Is it because of your own wisdom? Or is it because of what society tells you is right and what's valued? The more we start to get to know ourselves, the more we, know thyself. It's wise words for a reason. The more we start to really know ourselves and our own capabilities and rewrite the script of what's acceptable versus what feels right and natural to us, the more I truly believe some of these more nurturing aspects will start to come out. It even enables the more nurturing aspects in men too that they may have forgotten about a long time ago. How to nurture themselves, how to form proper brotherhoods with each other, how to encourage each other and build each other up. A lot of that starts with finding balance. And right now, the balance is non-existent. And if we had more nuance and balance in the things that we valued in society, the world would be a very different place. And all of that starts with mindset and getting to know who you are and what you truly believe, and trusting your own intuition and wisdom more than we're likely doing now. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I know that's a little bit different from what I tend to talk about, but again, it's been weighing really heavy on my heart for a long time now, so there it is. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure that you like and comment, share your feedback. This helps me know what's connecting with others, and if you have any requests for future videos, make sure that you message me on Instagram. I look forward to seeing you soon.